Tehran, Persian. Tehran is the capital and largest city in Iran and Tehran province, with a population of around 9 million in the city and 16 million in the wider metropolitan area. Tehran is the largest city and urban area of Iran, the second largest city in Western Asia, and the third largest in the Middle East. It is ranked 29th in the world by the population of its metropolitan area. In the Classical era, part of the present-day city of Tehran was occupied by a Median city, which in the Avesta occurs as Rega. It was destroyed by the Mongols in the early 13th century, and remains now as a city in Tehran province, located towards the southern end of the modern-day city of Tehran. Tehran was first chosen as the capital of Iran by Aga Muhammad Khan of the Qajar dynasty in 1796. In order to remain within close reach of Iran's territories in the Caucasus, at that time still part of Iran, and to avoid the vying factions of previous Iranian dynasties, the capital has been moved several times throughout the history, and Tehran is the 32nd national capital of Iran. The city was the seat of the Qajars and Pahlavis, the two last imperial dynasties of the country. It is home to many historical collections, such as the royal complexes of Golestan, Saadabad, and Niavaran, as well as the country's most important governmental buildings of the modern period. Large-scale demolition and rebuilding began in the 1920s, and Tehran has been a destination for the mass migrations from all over Iran since the 20th century. The most famous landmarks of the city include the Azadi Tower, a memorial built during the Pahlavi period, and the Mehrad Tower, the world's 17th tallest freestanding structure, which was built in 2007. The Tabiat Bridge is considered the third symbol of the city, and it was built in 2014. The majority of the people of Tehran are Persian-speaking people who identify themselves as Persians, and roughly 99% of the population understand and speak Persian, but there are also large populations of other Iranian ethnicities in the city, such as Azerbaijanis, Armenians, Lurs, and Kurds who speak Persian as of their second language. Tehran is served by the Mehrad and Khomeini international airports, a central railway station, the rapid transit rail system of the Tehran Metro, as well as a trolleybus and a BRT system, and has a huge network of highways. There have been plans to relocate Iran's capital from Tehran to another area, due mainly to air pollution and the city's exposure to earthquakes. To date, no definitive plans have been approved. History. The origin of the name Tehran is uncertain. The settlement of Tehran dates back over 7,000 years. Classical era. The present-day city of Tehran was a suburb of an important Median city which was known as Rega in Old Persian. In the Avestas Videvdit, Rega is mentioned as the 12th sacred place created by the Ormuzd. In Old Persian inscriptions, Rega appears as a province. It was a major area for the Iranian tribes of Medes and Achaemenids. From Rega, Darius the Great sent reinforcements to his father Hystaspes, who was putting down the rebellion in Parthia. In some Middle Persian texts, Rega is given as the birthplace of Zoroaster, although modern historians generally place the birth of Zoroaster in Khorasan, derived into modern Persian as Ray. It remains now as a city located towards the southern end of the modern-day city of Tehran, which has been absorbed into the Greater Tehran metropolitan area. Mount Damavand, the highest peak of Iran which is located near Tehran, is an important location in Ferdowsi's Shahnameh, the long Iranian epic poem which is based on ancient epics of Iran. It appears in the epics as the birthplace of Manucher, the residence of Mars, the place where Freyd unbounds the dragon fiend Azed-i-Dahaka, and the place where Arash the archer shot his arrow from. medieval period during the Sassanid era. In 641, Yazd III issued his last appeal to the nation from Ray, before fleeing to Khorasan. Ray was dominated by the Parthian Myron family, and Sayavaksh, the son of Myron the son of Bahram Chobin, who resisted the Muslim invasion. Because of this resistance, when the Arabs captured Ray, they ordered the town to be destroyed and ordered Farrukhzad to rebuild the town anew. There is a temple in Ray, which is said to be one of the temples of Anahita, a cosmological figure in Iranian mythology. After the Muslim invasion, the temple became dedicated to the eldest daughter of Yazd III, Bibi Shah Banu, who married to Hussein ibn Ali, the fourth leader of the Shia faith. Tehran was a well-known village in the 9th century, but less known than the city of Ray, which was flourishing nearby. Najmuddin Razi, known as Dyer, declared the population of Ray to be 500,000 before the Mongol invasion. In the 10th century, Ray was described in detail by Islamic geographers. Despite the interest that Arabian Baghdad displayed in Ray, the number of Arabs in the city remained insignificant and the population mainly consisted of Persians of all classes. The Oghuz Turks invaded Ray discreetly in 1035 and 1042, but the city was recovered during the Seljuk and Khwarezmian eras. In the 13th century, the Mongols invaded Ray, laid the city to ruin and massacred many of its inhabitants. Following the invasion, many of the city's inhabitants escaped to Tehran, and the new residents took over its role. In July 1404, Ruy González de Clavijo, a Castilian ambassador, visited Tehran while on a journey to Samarkand, the capital of Timur, who ruled Iran at the time. Clavijo later described Tehran as an unwalled region under the Timurid Empire. Early modern era, when the Italian traveller Pietro della Valle passed through the city overnight in 1618, he mentioned it as Tehran in his memoirs, while Thomas Herbert mentioned it as Tiroan. Herbert stated that the city had 3,000 houses in 1627. In the early 18th century, Karim Khan of the Zand dynasty ordered a palace and a government office to be built in Tehran, possibly to declare the city his capital, but he later moved his government to Shiraz. Eventually, the Qajar king Aga Muhammad Khan was the first to choose Tehran as the capital of Iran in 1776. Aga Muhammad Khan's choice of his capital was based on a similar concern for the control of both the northern and the southern regions of Iran. He was aware of the loyalties of the inhabitants towards the previous capitals, Isfahan and Shiraz, to the Safavid and Zand dynasties respectively, and was wary of the power of the notable people in these cities. He probably viewed Tehran's lack of a substantial urban structure as a blessing, because it minimized the chances of resistance to his rule by the notables and by the general public. Moreover, he had to remain within close reach of Azerbaijan and Iran's integral Caucasian territories in the North and South Caucasus, at that time not yet irrevocably lost per the treaties of Golestan and Turkmenchay to the neighboring Imperial Russia, which would follow in the course of the 19th century. After 50 years of Qajar rule, the city still barely had more than 80,000 inhabitants. Up until the 1870s, Tehran consisted of a walled citadel, a roofed bazaar, and Sheristan, where the majority of the population resided in the three main neighborhoods of Atlajin, Chail Maidan, and Sangjalaj. The first development plan of Tehran in 1855 emphasized the traditional spatial structure. Architecture, however, found an eclectic expression to reflect the new lifestyle. The second major planning exercise in Tehran took place under the supervision of Dar Fannun. The map of 1878 included new city walls, in the form of a perfect octagon with an area of 19 square kilometers. which mimicked the Renaissance cities of Europe. Late modern era. As a response to the growing social awareness of civil rights, on June 2, 1907, the first parliament of the Persian constitutional revolution passed a law on local governance known as the Baladi Law. The second and third articles of the law, on Baladi community, provided a detailed outline on issues such as the role of councils within the city, the members' qualifications, the election process and the requirements to be entitled to vote. After the First World War, Reza Shah immediately suspended the Baladi Law of 1907, and the decentralized and autonomous city councils were replaced by centralist approaches of governance and planning. From the 1920s to 1930s, the city was essentially rebuilt from scratch, under the rule of Reza Shah Pahlavi. Reza Shah believed that ancient buildings such as large parts of the Golestan Palace, Teki Dowlat, the Tupkane Square, the city fortifications and the old citadel among others, should not be part of a modern city. They were systematically demolished, and modern buildings in the pre-Islamic Iranian style, such as the National Bank, the police headquarters, the telegraph office and the military academy were built in the place. The Grand Bazaar of Tehran was divided in half and many historic buildings were demolished in order to build wide straight avenues in the capital. Many Persian gardens also fell victim to new construction projects. The changes in the urban fabric started with the Street Widening Act of 1933, which served as a framework for changes in all other cities. As a result of this act, the traditional texture of the city was replaced with cruciform intersecting streets, creating large roundabouts located on the major public spaces such as the Bazaar, as an attempt to create a network for the easy movement of goods and vehicles in Tehran. The city walls and gates were demolished in 1937 and replaced by wide streets cutting through the urban fabric. The new city map of Tehran in 1937 was heavily influenced by the modernist planning patterns of zoning and gridiron networks. During the Second World War, Soviet and British troops entered the city. Tehran was the site of the Tehran Conference in 1943, attended by U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin, and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Tupkane Square in 1911, a former parliament building, built in the 1920s, a street in Tehran during the 1930s, National Bank of Iran, Sabza Maidan, in the 1940s. The Tehran Conference, 1943. The establishment of the Planning Organization of Iran in 1948 resulted in the first socio-economic development plan to cover 1949 to 1955. These plans not only failed to slow the unbalanced growth of Tehran, but with the 1962 land reforms that Shah called the White Revolution, Tehran's chaotic growth was further accentuated. To bring back order to the city and resolve the problem of social exclusion, the first comprehensive plan of Tehran was approved in 1968. The consortium of Iranian consultants Abdulaziz Mirza Farmanian and the American firm of Victor Gruen Associates identified the main problems blighting the city to be high-density suburbs, air and water pollution, inefficient infrastructure, unemployment and rural-urban migration. Eventually, the whole plan was marginalized by the 1979 revolution and the subsequent Iran-Iraq War. Tehran's most famous landmark, the Azadi Tower, was built by the order of the Shah in 1971. It was designed by Hossein Amanat, an architect who won a competition to design the monument, using Sassanid and Achaemenid elements. Formerly known as the Shahayad Tower, it was built in commemoration of the 2,500-year celebration of the Persian Empire. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Tehran was rapidly developing under the reign of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Modern buildings altered the face of Tehran and ambitious projects were envisioned for the following decades. The majority of these projects, such as the Mehrad Tower, were continued after the 1979 revolution when Tehran's urbanization had reached its peak, and the new government started many other new projects. During the 1980–88 Iran–Iraq War, Tehran was the target of repeated Scud missile attacks and airstrikes. In 2007, the 435-meter-high Mehrad Tower was completed, and since then has become a landmark for the city of Tehran. The 270 meters pedestrian overpass of Tabiat Bridge is another symbolic structure of the city, which was designed by the award-winning Layla Iragian and completed in 2014. Geography, location and subdivisions. Tehran County borders Shemiranot County to the north, Damavand County to the east, Eslamshah, Pakdasht, and Ray counties to the south, and Karaj and Shahir counties to the west. The city of Tehran is divided into 22 municipal districts, each with its own administrative center. 20 of the 22 municipal districts are located in Tehran County's Central District, while the districts 1 and 20 are respectively located in Shemiranot and Ray counties. Sultan Road, Khan District, Aftab Road, Kalazia Road, Central District, Sairud Road, Tehran, D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D6, D7, D8, D9, D10, D11, D12, D13, D14, D15, D16, D17, D18, D19, D20, D21, D22. View of El Ayer and Modez Expressway. Streets and alleys of northern Tehran usually look wider and more lush. Abbasabad, Vali, Asr Street, Ekshari. Northern Tehran is the wealthiest region of the city, consisting of various smaller districts from northeast to northwest, such as Zafrani, Jordan, Eli, Kamrani, Ajodani, Farmani, Daris, Kitari, and Qarb Town. Climate. Tehran features a semi-arid climate in a hot summer Mediterranean climate fashion. Tehran's climate is largely defined by its geographic location, with the towering Alborz Mountains to its north and the Central Desert to the south. It can be generally described as mild in the spring and autumn, hot and dry in the summer, and cold and wet in the winter. Because the city is large with significant differences in elevation among various districts, the weather is often cooler in the hilly north than in the flat southern part of Tehran. For instance, the 17.3 kilometers Vali Asr Street runs from the Tehran's railway station than 1,117 meters elevation above sea level. In the south of the city to the Tajrish Square, 1,612 meters elevation above sea level. In the north, however, the elevation can even rise up to 1,900 meters at the end of the Velenjak Street in the north of Tehran. Summer is long, hot and dry with little rain, but relative humidity is generally low. Average high temperatures are between 35 and 40 degrees Celsius, and at nights it rarely drops below 23 degrees Celsius. Most of the light annual precipitation occurs from late autumn to mid-spring, but no one month is particularly wet. The hottest month is July, with a mean minimum temperature of 26 degrees Celsius and a mean maximum temperature of 36 degrees Celsius, and the coldest is January, with a mean minimum temperature of -1 degree Celsius and a mean maximum temperature of 8 degrees Celsius. The weather of Tehran can sometimes be unpredictably harsh. The record high temperature is 43 degrees Celsius and the record low is -17 degrees Celsius. On January 5 and 6, 2008, after years of relatively little snow, a wave of heavy snow and low temperatures covered the city in a thick layer of snow and ice, forcing the Council of Ministers to officially declare a state of emergency and close down the capital on January 6 and 7. Tehran has seen an increase in relative humidity and annual precipitation since the beginning of the 21st century. This is most likely because of the afforestation projects, which also include expanding parks and lakes. The northern parts of Tehran are still more lush than the southern parts. In February 2005, heavy snow covered all of the parts of the city. Snow depth was 15 centimeters in south part of the city and 100 centimeters in the north of city. A newspaper said it had been the worst weather for 34 years. 10,000 bulldozers and 13,000 municipal workers deployed to keep the main roads open. On February 3, 2014, Tehran reached a heavy snowfall, specifically in the northern parts of the city, with a height of 2 meters. Within the 1 week successive snowfall, roads were made impassable in some areas in north of Tehran, along with a temperature variety of -8 degrees Celsius to -16 degrees Celsius on June 3, 2014. A severe thunderstorm with powerful microbursts created a haboob that engulfed the city in sand and dust. 5 people were killed and more than 57 injured. This disaster also knocked numerous trees and power lines down. It struck between 5 and 6 p.m., plummeting temperatures from 33 degrees Celsius to 19 degrees Celsius in just an hour. The dramatic temperature drop was accompanied by wind gusts reaching nearly 118 kilometers per hour. Environmental issues. A plan to move the capital has been discussed many times in prior years, due mainly to the environmental issues of the region. Tehran is rated as one of the world's most polluted cities, and is also located near 2 major fault lines. The city suffers from severe air pollution. 80% of the city's pollution is due to cars. The remaining 20% is due to industrial pollution. Other estimates suggest that motorcycles alone account for 30% of air and 50% of sound pollution in Tehran. In 2010, the government announced that, for security and administrative reasons, the plan to move the capital from Tehran has been finalized. The Iranian parliament named Mehrad, Esfahan and Semnan as 3 of the main candidates to replace Tehran as the capital. There are plans to relocate 163 state firms to the provinces and several universities from Tehran to avoid damages from a potential earthquake. The officials are engaged in a battle to reduce air pollution. It has, for instance, encouraged taxis and buses to convert from petrol engines to engines that run on compressed natural gas. Furthermore, the government has set up a traffic zone covering the city center during peak traffic hours. Entering and driving inside this zone is only allowed with a special permit. There have also been plans to raise people's awareness about the hazards of the pollution. One method that is currently being employed is the installation of pollution indicator boards all around the city to monitor the current level of particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide, and carbon monoxide.